I never thought I would be the type of person to share something like this online, but some memories refuse to die quietly. This story has haunted me since I was 12 or 13, and no matter how many times I've tried to rationalize it, the fear still clings to me like it happened yesterday. Back then, my world revolved around video games. My best friend and I would spend hours lost in shooters, screaming in frustration one second and laughing the next. One night, after smashing my PlayStation controller in a fit of rage, I told him I couldn't play anymore. But he offered me his spare, saying I could just walk over and borrow it. His house wasn't far, just one short walk through the winter night. It was already dark when I left. Snow fell in heavy, silent sheets, muffling every sound, and the fog made the street lamps look like faint, dying stars. That's when I felt it, a strange, prickling sensation crawling across my back, the undeniable sense of being watched. I kept glancing around, but the street was empty, swallowed by mist. At my friend's house, I picked up the controller, trying to shake the unease. But through the window, we both saw him, a man, standing perfectly still in the middle of the street. He wasn't close enough to recognize, just a silhouette against the fog, frozen, staring. We whispered nervously, debating whether he was lost or needed help. Finally, we stepped outside onto the porch and called out. Silence, no answer. The figure only stared before slowly turning and walking away, his outline melting into the fog. My friend's parents dismissed it, saying we were imagining things, just kids who played too many video games. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Hours later, after we'd played a few rounds together, I started my walk home. The streets were nearly empty, the snow crunching under my boots the only sound. At first, I managed to convince myself that I had overreacted, but then that same suffocating sensation returned, the crawling awareness that I was not alone. I looked around. Most of the people I passed seemed normal, hurried strangers bundled against the cold. But just before reaching my house, I turned for one last glance behind me. And that's when I saw him. The man, standing behind a tree, his head tilted, eyes fixed directly on me. The moment our gazes locked, he stepped out from the shadows and then broke into a run. My heart nearly exploded. He moved shockingly fast for someone I guessed to be around 60. His boots pounded the snow as he screamed something in a guttural foreign language I couldn't understand. Whatever he was saying, it was angry, violent. I bolted for my house, fumbling with my keys, nearly dropping them in my panic. Just as I managed to throw open the door and slam it shut, I dared to glance back. But he was gone, vanished, as though the night itself had swallowed him. I told my friend immediately, and he urged me to call the police. I did, but all I could describe was a silhouette, an older man, fast, angry, relentless. The officers didn't take it seriously. My parents, though, were shaken, their anger quickly dissolving into fear. And then came the reports. People from my small town describing the same thing. A man watching them, following them through the fog, shouting in that same indecipherable tongue. Despite all the calls, the police never caught anyone. To this day, no one knows who he was or what he wanted. Was he trying to terrify us, Or was he waiting for the right moment to do something far worse? All anyone agreed on was his age, around 60, but beyond that, he remained a ghost. I'll never forget the way my blood ran cold when our eyes locked, or the sound of his footsteps crashing toward me through the snow. That night, I truly believed I would die. And what chills me most is not just what I saw, but the fact that years later, when I finally told this story, some of my friends admitted they had experienced the exact same thing. The same man, the same stare, the same pursuit. To this day, he lingers in our memories like a shadow that refuses to fade. Fair warning, this one never really stops. The situation is still ongoing, which only dials the unease higher. Monday night began ordinary. Then by 4 a.m., the silence outside our little rented house snapped like a wire. My girlfriend and I sleep in a small rural house we rent, tucked well away from the noise and chaos of the city. The nearest neighbor is roughly 300 feet away. During the day, it feels peaceful, maybe even idyllic. At night, the quiet presses in until every small sound threatens to mean something. That night, the quiet exploded. We were jolted awake by violent, rapid banging on the front door. Not a polite knock, but desperate, relentless impacts that sounded like someone trying to break in. It wasn't something you could ignore. We lay frozen, hearts racing, listening in the dark. Before I could swing my legs out of bed to grab my pistol, a woman's voice started screaming from the porch. "Open the door! I'm having a seizure! Mom, open the door!" The pounding intensified, each blow ringing through the house like a bell. My gut screamed that something was wrong. Instinct sharpened every sense. I grabbed my pistol, my heart slamming against my ribs. My girlfriend lay motionless beside me, eyes wide and utterly silent, a statue that could not be moved. I refused to open the door and escalate whatever was outside. Instead, I dialed 911. The dispatcher confirmed another neighbor had called and officers were en route. 10 minutes, an eternity when every strike at the door yells, "Now." I stood at the window watching the woman's shadow on the porch. She didn't stop. She hammered at the metal with terrifying force, punctuated by high, frantic screams that clipped the air. My mind raced through worst-case scenarios. When the police finally arrived, I think I breathed for the first time in 5 minutes. 2 officers approached the door and spoke with the woman through the wood. I could hear her frantic yelling through the barrier. After a brief exchange, an officer knocked at her own door and asked what the woman had been shouting about. I told them everything, the seizure plea, the cries for mom, the relentlessness of the pounding. We stepped out cautiously to inspect the damage. Lying on our porch was a pair of channel lock pliers. I looked up and found several deep dents in the metal door. This wasn't just fist shaking. She'd been using the pliers like a hammer. Focused, violent blows scattered across the surface like a map of rage. I handed the tool to the officers. They photographed the damage. The dents were everywhere, a pattern of intent rather than accident. When I asked why she'd been so frantic, they answered cautiously. If her claim was true, then she had reason to panic. When I asked where she lived, one officer pointed to the house next door. She'd recently moved back in with her parents. That fact should have been soothing, but it didn't land that way. The violence of her method, the theatrical cries, the choice of our door, they felt deliberate in a way that my skin prickled.
About 5 hours after the cops left, there was another knock, soft this time. 2 tentative raps. I hesitated, opened the door, and found the same woman. Her presence was unnerving. A sickly thin frame swallowed by an oversized hoodie, pale skin, hollow eyes, movements jangling like loose wire. She looked like someone unraveling in real time. It was obvious she was battling something far worse than panic, heavy drug use, or whatever else eats a person until the edges go numb. "Sorry if I scared you last night," she said flatly. There was a lot going on. Then, abruptly practical. "I can fix your door. How much would it cost to just paint over the dents?" I stared. Paint? As if a few coats could erase the force that had carved metal? I tried to explain the damage would need actual repair, not cosmetics. She shrugged, uninterested. "Okay, I'll get someone to fix it," she muttered, and walked off as if we had shared a moment of neighborly inconvenience, rather than survived an assault on our home. It's Thursday now. The house carries a thickness in the air that won't lift. Every time we leave, she stands half in her doorway, motionless, her vacant eyes tracking us to the car. She never speaks, only watches, like a slow recording motion sensor. It feels like living under a microscope. Every habitual move examined by someone who has already demonstrated erratic and dangerous behavior. We filed for a protective order. We were told the case report would be ready by Monday. Until then, we endure her presence. She hasn't struck our door again, but we haven't slept properly since that night. For 3 nights after the incident, she paced outside our house after midnight. Not wandering, but a mechanical back and forth, as if waiting for something only she knew. No knocks this time, but her silhouette 15 feet from our doorway felt almost as invasive as the hammering. All doors and windows are locked. We lie in bed listening for the slightest sound, each creak a potential threat. I don't function without sleep. It's eating us. We've started searching for a new place to rent. I like our house, but living next to someone who attacks your door and then returns with blank apologies and a promise to fix it is not tenable. What troubles me most is the ordinary cadence of her daylight self. She could pass for a frail figure on any sidewalk, and how ordinary can still be dangerous. The contradiction unnerves. Violent force at night, then blank contrition by day. She used pliers as a weapon, then offered paint as a solution. She smashes, then watches silently while we pack the car. Those contradictions feel rehearsed, as if there is intent behind the chaos. Maybe we overreact. Maybe she's ill, addicted, broken in ways that deserve help. But when someone pounds on your door like they mean to break it, then stands and catalogs your comings and goings at night, instinct becomes the better counselor than charity. For now, we brace and plan. The police did what they could. Paperwork is underway. But paperwork is thin when a presence refuses sense. She left dents in our door, and a dent in our sense of safety that won't be smoothed by paint. We double-check locks, keep the phone charged, and keep that pistol within reach. Every time we see her silhouette frozen in a doorway, the cold knot in my chest tightens. The knowledge that some threats don't come with clear faces, and apologies can be rehearsals for something worse.
Fair warning. This one is a slow burn. 5 years later, the memory still sits in my chest like a cold stone, and sometimes I wake thinking about how easily that night could have ended very differently. This happened in 2019, while my partner and I were driving across British Columbia on a road trip that started with excitement and ended with a quiet, stubborn unease. We'd rented a car in Vancouver and planned a loose, counterclockwise loop, up to Jasper, across toward the parks, then back down via Whistler. 5 weeks of sleeping under stars in national park campsites and rest stops, moving from one quiet stretch of wilderness to the next. On one particular evening, somewhere along the Crown Nest Highway between Nelson and Castlegar, we pulled into a provincial park campground where we intended to stop for the night. It was a pretty spot, a lake that swallowed reflections, a large parking area, scattered benches, and a wooden shelter. Beautiful, remote, far from any real civilization. There were already a handful of campers, motorhomes, caravans, the quiet hum of people who move slowly enough to be almost part of the landscape. We were the only ones with a tent. We arrived before dark, set up our little campsite, exchanged polite greetings with the other people there, and tried to settle into that open, easy feeling road trips sometimes give you. But then, there was one man who kept pulling at the edges of our calm. He was an old chap, late 60s, my guess, with a motorhome and a smile that sat a fraction too long. Friendly to the point of insistence. He noticed we had a coffee pot and immediately offered a 5-kilogram bag of beans from his vehicle, despite saying he didn't drink coffee himself because he didn't like the taste. He followed up the offer like a second thought. All you have to do is come and get them. That little inconsistency, buying something you never drink, lodged in my mind the way a tiny splinter does. We politely declined. He hovered. He left. We pitched the tent and made dinner in the on-site shelter, keeping one eye on the lake, the other on him. We shared looks, neither of us comfortable. But maybe he was harmless, we rationalized. He wandered down to the water while we ate, came back pretending not to see us, then, unable to help himself, drifted over and started talking. He was chatty, overly curious. The questions started ordinary, where we were from, where we were headed, and then skewed, minute by minute, into something too personal for a stranger. Are you married? Do you live together? Do you have children? Do you want children? Questions that might have been harmless coming from family sounded off when he asked them, edged with a softness that made the words feel like traps. Worse, he offered Coke, a multi-pack in his motorhome, and again admitted he didn't drink it himself. If you want some, he said, come and take a couple. Each time he offered us something he purportedly didn't consume, some small part of my brain clicked into alert mode. Why buy and not drink? Why persist in inviting two obvious strangers into your living space when you're camped with others around? We finished quickly, the conversation sourning, polite refusals growing more curt with each approach. He still didn't get the hint. When it started to get dim, we decided to take a walk to brush our teeth and throw away our rubbish at the bins at the bottom of the car park. A reasonable escape route, we thought, to put distance between his motorhome and our tent. As we approached the bins, there was movement. A large, shadowy shape leaning into one of them. It sprang down onto all fours and shot into the tree line. We froze. The silhouette had been unmistakably feline. Cat-like shoulders, a long, slender tail, a mountain lion. It had been wrenched from the bins by our presence, terrified more of us than we were of it. The sight of it was visceral, the ripple of muscle under fur, the way it melted into the trees. We both felt a thud of raw, primitive adrenaline.
Startled and suddenly very aware of the fragility of our tented shelter, we walked back up the hill in hurried, deliberate silence and made a decision. We wouldn't sleep in the tent that night. We'd recline the car seats, lock the doors, and pretend the vehicle would keep us safe from whatever prowled just beyond the trees, feline or otherwise. That night, pressed into the back seats, listening to the car shrink to the sound of our breathing, the creepy old camper retreated to the back of our minds. We slept in fits and starts until morning, the dark leaves and distant water outside our windows. In daylight, the world felt safer, and 1,000 small reasons to leave the site replaced the raw, immediate fear. We packed up early, before anyone else woke, and left. We wanted distance, speed, the comforting anonymity of the next town. As we drove off, relief washed through us. No more wildlife encounters, no more persistent offers of coffee or Coke. We tried to explain it away. Maybe we'd misread a lonely old man looking for company. Maybe we'd been overly sensitive after a long day on the road. Later that day, the air in the car grew heavier in a different way. My brother called from home. He'd seen something on the local news. There was a manhunt underway in BC after a string of killings farther north, near the Alaska border. 2 men were on the run, suspected of murdering 3 people. They didn't match the old guy at the campground in our minds, but the story germinated a new, low-level dread. You never really know who is nearby. Even if the eerie camper wasn't connected, the fact that awful people were loose in the same province made the whole night sit on our shoulders differently. When I look back, I still wonder if we overreacted, or if that instinct, the one that made us refuse, leave early, sleep in the car, saved us. One detail keeps gnawing: the offers of things he didn't consume. Why buy coffee if you never drink it? Why offer Coca-Cola if you're certain you dislike the taste? One Reddit commenter put it bluntly: he bought those items to make his motorhome seem hospitable, to lure visitors in. I don't know if that was his intent. All I know, the feeling that something about him was wrong in a way you can't always name. In the end, we walked away. We carried a close encounter with both a mountain lion and a man who looked like an ordinary grandfather, but whose behavior left me uneasy. That night taught me to trust the feeling that drops into your gut when a person's friendliness is too persistent to be innocent. Trust your gut. It exists for a reason. I still think about that smile and those offers. I still shiver when I imagine what might have happened yet. One Redditor's comment stayed with me: you did not overreact. If your intuition tells you something is wrong, then it is.